Well, welcome everyone. Today is March 18th, 2026, and I would like to welcome all of you, our members and our presenters, to our Family Partnership Council meeting today. It's been a while. We haven't met since September the 10th, and hopefully you will find the minutes from that meeting in the chat, and we'll be looking at those and approving those in just a few minutes. Before we get started, I would like to just remind everyone what our purpose is. The Kentucky Family Partnership Council serves as an advisory role to the Kentucky Department of Education and provides input regarding topics of interest to families, such as ways that families and schools and communities can assist schools in ensuring the achievement of all levels of all students. And I know that that's a whole mouthful, but that is a great work that this council does. And I want to thank you for dedicating your time to serving on this group. I know March has been extremely busy, so I want to thank all of you for your time today and joining us and just your thoughtful interaction and attention today to our topics. So what I would also like to do at this time is we do have one change in our agenda. Michelle Searcy is not available today, so we will save her section till a future meeting. And I'd also like to introduce our newest member, which is Kathleen Kelly. And I saw Kathleen log in. Thank you, Kathleen, for joining us. She is representing the Kentucky Out of School Alliance. And so we are delighted to have her with us today as well. Advisory members, council members, just ensure that your video is streaming and that you are visible throughout the call. Your microphone should be muted when you are not speaking. However, just a reminder, all discussions must be available to the public, so make certain that your mic is unmuted when speaking. And at this time, I'm going to turn to Leslie Spears, and she will handle our roll call. Leslie?
Thank you, Marcia. I'm going to do the roll call. Laura Beard. Brittany Faulkner.
I'm here.
Ashley Bruce.
I'm here.
Tara Tricor.
Here.
Leah Markham.
Present.
Amy Nickerson.
Here.
Alicia Miller. Elizabeth Delaney. Melissa Goins.
I'm here on behalf of Melissa Goins. I'm Beth Martin.
Great. Thank you, Beth.
Sure.
Kathleen Kelly.
Here.
Rhonda Logsden.
Hi, I hope y'all are doing well.
Jeremy Cole. And Autumn Nagel.
Present.
I'm going to turn it back over to you, Marcia. Thank you all.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you for all of you being here today. And thank you, Beth, for being here in Melissa's place. So we appreciate seeing your face and your input. I just want to remind all of you too that the minutes, we're going to look at the minutes and approve the minutes. The minutes were sent to you in the calendar invite for today's meeting, but there's also a link in the chat box that Leslie has already placed, or if she's not doing it already, she may be doing it now. So I'm going to just give you a few minutes to review those minutes, and then I will call for an approval.
They are in the chat, Marcia.
Thank you, Leslie. I see a few people still reading, so I'll wait just another minute or so. All right, I think everyone's had enough time to review. So at this time, I will call for a motion to approve the September the 10th, 2025 Family Partnership Council meetings. If you can come off mute.
So moved. This is Ashley Bruce.
Thank you, Ashley. May I have a second?
Second, Autumn Nagel.
Thank you, Autumn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And any
Aye.
opposed? Thank you. I think we have them approved. Our next item on our agenda is Commissioner Fletcher. Just wanted to let everyone know he is facilitating the monthly KDE meeting this afternoon, so he is unable to join us. So we do hopefully we'll be able to have him join us on our meeting in May. The next thing, we are going to switch over to introduce our first topic. I'm going to stop sharing, and I would like to introduce Dr. Melissa Wainwright. She's here with us today. She's going to talk about access to multi-tiered systems, which we call MTSS, Systems of Support for Students and Families. And I know, Melissa, I stopped midstream there. So it's access to multi-tiered systems of support, which we call MTSS. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Wainwright, and she's going to be sharing her screen, which she has, and it's all you. I can see it. You're on mute.
I took it away for a moment. It's back up.
It's back up. Thanks.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And I want to talk about family partnerships. And over the years, I've learned the value of positive two-way communication. I learned it as a parent of now adult children, of the importance of speaking with the classroom teacher and the school. We learn it from conversations with work and families, parents, and I would guess that all of us on the call have had opportunities with positive relationships, and they are stronger when we connect and collaborate and communicate. And today, as we go through our session, I hope that we can gain some understanding of what it means to truly partner. And as we do this, we'll look at how families and schools partner within the Kentucky's multi-tiered system of support as a framework to help us with that happening. We will look at questions that you can ask to have conversations, and we'll look at just some ways that we might be able to have some conversation starters to help with connecting and collaborating with our schools. And then we'll look at some resources that are there to provide additional support along the way. As we go, if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or unmute and ask them as we go. I want this to be as much what you want as possible. Thinking about that structure, it's a system that's for all students. We want this to be where each and every student has their needs met at just the right time. It's comprehensive, and we look at academics, behavior, and social emotional learning. All of this, we use data, we use information to help us make decisions, not to simply say, well, we feel this, we think this. While observations are important, we want to make sure that we have facts to make our decisions informed and for the best of our students. That being said, parents, you are experts in your child, and sharing that is also a part of that data that comes to the school to help with the partnership. The importance of a multi-tiered system of support is that it's preventative and it's meant to intervene early. Formerly, we operated under, you may have heard, response to intervention. That was basically wait until a student was struggling, failing at something, and then intervene. We've now moved to a more proactive stance, which is a multi-tiered system of support where we provide just in time, just right instruction, and as much as possible, we're proactive in an effort to not wait for something to happen. That being said, as you are communicating with schools, as you know parts about your student, if that's helpful to know on the front end, that's part of being proactive, helping sharing that. All of the multi-tiered system of support is there to increase our understanding, our connection, and our collaboration. On the right, you see a circle, and that is the logo for Kentucky's multi-tiered system of support. There are 6 areas that you are able to see there. Family school community partnership is an essential element of that. These are all meant to work together to help meet the needs of our students. We're going to focus and center in on that tiered delivery system where we're looking at what does instruction look like? What does intervention look like? What do our supports look like for academics, behavior, and social emotional learning? Gonna do that through just helping to gain some understanding of what those tiers mean and what might that mean for your student and what questions might we have with that. Also, you'll notice in the bottom left, there's a hyperlink to Kentucky's regulation on a multi-tiered system of support. Should that be of interest to you, that's there. It has terms with definitions and just the structure of the multi-tiered system of support through that regulation. When I think about communication, I think about how do we have access to it? These are some ways that we have access to share information as well as to receive information. We have those basics of phone calls and emails and Infinite Campus Messenger. We also have those larger scale parent-teacher conferences and family nights and websites and social media, all of that. What I think is important about access is that you're receiving information from the school and also feeling free to share it. If there's something that is important to know, it's not necessary that you have to wait until that parent conference to share that. As a part of a partnership, helping each other understand is very important. And just keeping in mind, these are some of the ways that we have access. To have a partnership, we need to be there to support each other. And if you feel that you're not receiving this, certainly make time to have a phone call or set up a time to talk to someone that you're comfortable with, the classroom teacher, school counselor, whomever in the school that you have that connection. And I would say establish it as early as you can and not wait until there's a conflict. It's really good to get that rapport going from the beginning. Moving into that tier delivery system, what might a partnership look like at tier 1? When we think about tier 1, you see there are 2 triangles. The little one represents all of instruction, intervention, support, and assessment. The larger one, we're going to hone in on that bottom layer, which is that green layer, and that is, you may hear it referenced as tier 1. We're going to think of these as layers of instruction and support. This is where all students receive high quality grade level learning opportunities, and that's for all students to have access to that. It's again where we want to have early intervention and support. And some ways we do this, in addition to what was mentioned on the previous slide, there are some family guides. When we get to the resources, I have that to share with you. And then those regular report cards and progress reports. Staying involved in what is happening, knowing what resources are used for the grade level. That's that tier 1. What is it that everyone receives? It might be for behavior, having those behavior expectations for the school. Some schools use what's called PBIS, and those are those general expectations of what is expected for each and every student. Then moving to the next layer, it is called tier 2. And that's an additional layer. You'll notice it's on top of the green. We keep the green throughout all layers. And I've heard this analogy of it as paint. Every student has green, and then when they need additional support, they would have that tier 2 or those students represented in yellow. That's usually some students. It's not a label, it's not a place, it's not a program. It certainly doesn't mean that there's something that the student is lacking. It means that they need something, but it doesn't mean that there's something that we want to be able to provide the student with what they need. We provide targeted instruction and all to reduce the delays. A big shift has happened of tier 2 really aligning more and more with tier 1, providing the student with the skills that they might need to be successful in tier 1. This may happen in some of your schools with a win time, what I need, or a flex time. Can happen in the classroom. Sometimes they go to another room for the support. It can happen anywhere, but it's what does my student need at this time? It's meant to be flexible and fluid and to provide the student with just-in-time support. In this one, members of the problem-solving team include the parent. And that is important to know that part of the problem solving, part of receiving the information at this level is what we at KDE recommend for the schools to do. As far as when we get into early literacy and early numeracy, that is where it's required in having a reading improvement plan or a numeracy improvement plan. But just overall, having the family members a part of it. MTSS is not meant to delay support to students. It's meant to provide the support to the students when they need it. And when a student is in this tier 2, you will receive progress reports based on the intervention. That should be in addition to the progress report. That is best practice. And then some of the students, few of those, will need individualized, intensified, additional layer of support, and that's tier 3. It's not separate from, it's layered on top of. If you think about tier 2 that we just discussed, a student might receive an intervention for 20-25 minutes 3 times a week. Making it intensified, we would maybe extend to 30 minutes a day, 30 minutes, 5 days a week. That would be intensifying the layer. It might also be in tier 2 where we have a group of 5 to 7. In tier 3, we might have 1 to 3 students in the group. There might be a specialist that works with the student in this. All of these are to reduce the delays. In tier 1, we can provide support by breaking down into processes, providing models. We can intervene at tier 1, we can intervene at tier 2, and we can intervene at tier 3. All students should be getting what they need at just the right time. There are, for literacy, read at home plans, and I have that linked in the slides where you'll be able to access that. And parents, again, part of that problem solving team. Putting it all together, this may at first glance look like a lot of arrows and information on a slide. Walking through the process of what does this problem solving look like at any of those tiers, here's a little bit of what the process looks like. If you could start up at the top where you see universal screener and other data. Those universal screeners are typically 3 times a year, fall, winter, and spring. Some of you may know them as MAP or iReady or STAR. They're universal screeners that happen. Other data is considered looking at student work analysis, office referrals, attendance, looking at where are the students at that time. Decisions are made not based on one source of data, but multiple data sources. And then the school determines from that, students that are on grade level, you see the darker, wider arrow, they stay with tier 1 support, grade level support, but all the while being monitored to make sure that there aren't areas of need. If there are areas of need, providing that within the regular classroom. Those are not at risk at the time. Then there are, you'll notice, at risk. That's where the circle arrows start in. Students that are at risk, a team, normally it's called an MTSS team, looks at the students that are at risk to determine, do we have information available to us that will help us make the next decision for that student? If we don't, then we do what's called a diagnostic assessment to go a little bit further to understand what is the root of why this is occurring. What information do we have to help us make this informed decision, looking at the child holistically with academic data, behavior data, and social emotional learning data. From the diagnostic assessment, the team determines what is the intervention, what are we going to provide this student to support them in working on grade level content. We provide the intervention, then we do what's called progress monitoring. We watch to see, is this working? And that the team comes back together after a period of time and determines next steps. You'll notice 3 arrows there, a green one that arches back up. And that one, the team looks at the information from the intervention and the progress monitoring, and the team determines based on this information, the student is able to return and fade from the intervention, return to that oval where it's continue with grade level content. You notice a red arrow that goes across. There are times when the team determines we need more information. We made an informed decision last time. We feel like we need more information. We will explore another diagnostic assessment to dig a little bit deeper. Just for an example, I've worked with schools and it's a literacy matter. And when we go back to the diagnostic team, we see this student has not been attending school. Well, we need to intervene also with the attendance to be able to have the literacy. So the team will determine, do we need more information? And then continue the loop with intervention, progress monitoring, return to the team. There's also the yellow arrow that goes back to the intervention. And that's the team comes together, looks at the progress monitoring and determines this student is trending toward grade level, going at the rate we had, going toward the goal we have. The team decides we want to continue this intervention for another 6 to 8 weeks, or we want to keep this intervention, but we want to intensify it and move from 20 minutes 3 times a week to 30 minutes 5 times a week. Provide the student with what they need. And then the process continues. Progress monitoring, determine next steps. And that is
Melissa?
kind of, yes, ma'am.
There is a question in the chat, and since you're back to the universal screener, the question is related to that. And Rhonda is asking, are the universal screeners for mental health and behavioral or solely for academic?
They are for all included within that regulation that was on the page, that number in the bottom corner. It talks about schools, districts, K-12 offering universal screeners for all 3, what we call domains, academic, behavior, and social emotional. That is a local decision as to what that universal screener is. It's intended to be an evidence-based, research-based universal screener. It would be for all 3. And along with that, another universal screener that I recommend would be just looking at those early warning signs of how are the course grades? How's the student performing overall? What's the attendance? What's the behavior? Looking to see, is there a lot of movement of transiency? So lots of indicators can be universal screener, but yes, all 3. I know that slide has a lot on it, and I wanted to kind of walk through what that looks like as a process of always looking to see who is on grade level and who needs additional support, always having access to grade level content. And that's really important because that has been the shift of response to intervention to the multi-tiered system of support. In having these conversations at the different levels, I thought it might be helpful to have some conversation starters. If you've ever played a game where it's conversation starters and it just helps you to move the discussion along, sometimes they're table games. This one is, if you want it to be, it can be a table game, but it's for the model of the multi-tiered system of support. I would like to switch and show you this just real quickly. I put the QR code on there. I believe in the chat is the link. This is a document that was created. You all are the first eyes on it. And if you have feedback, I would welcome it because I hope to get this in the hands of schools and districts to share with their families in an effort to be able to have conversations. Families have had different experiences with school. And if I have had a maybe not so positive experience, having some anchors of what I might ask could be beneficial. This may be helpful to you. You know other families, share it. And my hope is that we get this into the hands of schools to pass it on. It is organized basically how I've shared with you all. There are questions, you'll see that triangle that we looked at, the green, the yellow, and the red. Those are questions that could be asked at any tier to have understanding about what is the experience my student is having. Then I tried to draft some that were tier 1 to really get into what might that look like on the foundational level of what resources are used, when are universal screeners, when do they happen at my student's school, and how do I know what that universal screener had? So those are there. Then on the second part are those tier 2 questions that really help when the student is needing that additional layer of support. These are some questions that can be asked of what is it going to look like? How long is it going to happen? What's my role as the family member in the process? Those questions are there for you. And then tier 3, getting to that individualized, intensified layer of some questions that can be asked. MTSS never meant to delay the process, always meant to move the student towards maximizing their outcomes. These are there to guide conversations along the way. I wanted to pause for just a moment because there's a lot on that document and give us a chance for if you have questions or any feedback on this, and then we'll go into some resources to look at.
Melissa, there are a couple questions in the chat. Leah, would you like to come off mute and ask your question directly? And then we'll go to Autumn's question. And if anyone else has any question, please.
Hi, Melissa. Thank you for your presentation so far. As a prior educator, but also now sitting in the seat of a parent, I remember doing the universal screener for behavior, and it was very separate. You know, we did MAP or iReady or DEA at the time. And then as the teacher, as the homeroom teacher, we did the universal screener for behavior, and it was just a checklist of things, and you rated each student. But we didn't ever share those with parents. And I'm just wondering, you know, we share the iReady data and we share those reports, but I'm just wondering if that gap and feedback loop has been closed since then, because I know from my parent hat, I'm not ever receiving those or any of that information, which is almost like the, well, no news is good news situation. But at the same time, I think it leaves a space for parents to really be a better partner if they can see how their students being viewed from the perspective of those at the school.
Really great point. And I believe the gap is closing because I'll say closing. I do not think the gap has closed in that area. And I think we have become much more, I'll use that loosely. We have become much more accustomed to the academic report coming home. And I believe that as the regulation has shifted to multi-tiered system of support K-12, including all 3 domains, that schools and districts are working toward that. And if we think about the partnership, that's probably something that we need to elevate as a reminder of, yes, we want parents to join in this. I think having access to that behavioral universal screener finding, because those look at internal and external behaviors, and we tend historically to notice the external behaviors, the more, I'm going to be extreme, and throwing a chair, that's very obvious. What's less obvious is if I'm disengaged and I'm really not causing any disruption, that's an internal behavior that we want to work on. How do we work on motivation? I think you've got my mind thinking on this of how might these questions be crafted for the school also to think about in terms of the universal, well, lots of it, in terms of how do we move from not just sharing academics to behavioral. Quick answer would be yes, parents would get information from the universal screener in all the domains. I see another hand.
Yes, I was just looking at this and thinking about it through a lens of a first coordinator, and having been a previous first coordinator, that was part of our school's MTSS team, and just really looking at the questions, I was wondering if it would be a good idea to maybe add something along the lines of how can I get support in removing non-academic barriers to my child's learning? You know, something that addresses what's going on at home, that might help them work through those tears and those other behaviors and things going on. Just something to think about, even if you took it to the school level and, you know, changed it to direct towards administrators.
I love your question. If you have it that you could retrieve it and put it in the chat, that would be fabulous. I tried to script it, but I didn't get quite all of it.
Yeah, no problem. I'll put it in the chat.
Thank you. I see another hand. I don't see names, I just see hands, but second hand that's there. Next
Rhonda,
hand.
I think. Rhonda, go ahead. You're muted, Rhonda. And Autumn, I didn't forget
Okay,
your question. We'll come to you. Go ahead, Rhonda.
First of all, thank you for this, because I think this is going to help bridge that gap and build that partnership for families, but then also it sets the stage of expectations, right? Because we are a critical part of, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but in a building a partnership way, because many families are not being involved at all the different levels, right? And so how do we bridge that and open the door in a positive way? Because parents being involved is going to be critical for our children to be successful, especially if they're struggling. But also too, that we can all share this. One of the things I wonder about on this, and I know it may seem very, simple, but can we put on this to where it directs? This is a bouncing point of, you want to learn more, go to the wonderful Kentucky MTSS website, right? There's all kinds of information to learn more. So not only with working with the school, but how can we ensure that all families have access, just as our educators do, to the same information and materials? So that might help as well.
I love that too. And I think someone is taking minutes and hopefully captured some of that. And I think the resources that are on the next slide might fit with that. And I know the Parent Family Engagement Hub, that's something that would be really wonderful to add on here. And I'm so glad that you all are the first eyes on this, because I was a little vulnerable putting it out here to this group, but what better feedback than Family Partnership Council to look at it.
Melissa, I see Laura's hand, I see Kathleen's hand, and I'm purposely holding off on Autumn's question because I think that might be in an upcoming slide. So Autumn, please, I'm just asking for some grace there. I think your question's going to be addressed. So I see Laura. Hi, Laura.
Hi. I just had a question, and it flows perfectly with what you said about the Partnership Council kind of being first eyes on this. And just to put out there that we have some parents in our current Commonwealth Institute for Parent Leadership class that would probably love the opportunity to just provide feedback. So I just wanted to offer that up. If you've not had a group of parents kind of look through this at their from their lens, and just to Beth's point, is there maybe additional questions that would be important for parents? Or, I always think about, do they understand some of the language in here that we all do, but sometimes it might not resonate with our families. So just wanted to offer that up, Melissa, if there's still room for this to be reviewed, or if it's, I don't know how far it is in the process of being adopted, but we'd be glad to do that.
And how do I get that loop in place?
You can just send it to my email. I'll put my email in the chat. I work at the Pritchard Committee, and so
Perfect.
we can just run that past our parents in our current class. Yep.
That would be wonderful. It's available. It's not finalized. I wanted feedback. That would be perfect.
That's a great suggestion. Kathleen, I saw your hand next, and then Autumn has a question related to this conversation, and then we'll hold her other question. So go ahead, Kathleen.
Yes, this is more from my personal education, being new into the systems, but I was in at the Game On conference. There was a session about the early warning systems and learning about that in Infinite Classroom. So I'm just curious if these play or if these work together, since the tiers seem very similar. And I know some of our out of school time professionals don't have access to this, but I can see where this would be really great opportunity to continue that conversation. So I was just curious if these systems play together in Infinite Classroom.
Exactly. Yes, they do. And those early warning tools, early warning systems give those at-risk indicators that we looked at, and in the loop, yes. Short answer, yes, they are a part of it and would fall within this tiered system. At the local level, what that would actually play out as what the student would and the families would come up with might be different, but using that information to inform decisions would be used.
Thank you.
And Kathleen, I can add to that too, Melissa, just a little bit here. Infinite Campus and the early warning tools, you may have also heard about the Principal Insights, which kind of drills down a little bit further. So it really does help bring some of these forward. So that's just a really rich tool to add to the toolbox in help determining who needs support and in what level and how. But thank you. These are great questions. And I'm so glad Laura brought up the SIPL group. What a great group to put eyes on this document. Autumn, yeah, go ahead.
May I just add one thing on what you just said about the insights? That if we think about, especially at tier 1, being proactive in our schools of putting into practice what is our expectation for behavior, getting those major school-wide systems, looking at our grade levels, what might they need, those insights give that bigger picture to put into place proactive measures to start the school year off in just the right place. And I think about a school, I mentioned having a transient community. If a school knows that they have a high transient rate, this is just an example, I would say, if we know we continuously have new students, what are we doing to be welcoming at the very moment that student comes in? Because making connections for that student and that family is really difficult. How are we, if we value being welcoming and a partnership, how are we doing to make people feel connected right away?
Great point. Autumn.
Now Autumn.
Thank you. Can you hear me? I'm not using any mic. Yes. Okay. I really struggle with this document because coming into this meeting, I had no clue what MTTS is. I looked up on my district website. I know it's there. I know it's on KDE, but your parent in the school probably has not heard this before. And so a document like this is going to go, okay, maybe this doesn't affect me. And so I kind of struggle with this because it has the little acronyms, and then this is tier 1, this is tier 2. They don't know what that is off the top. I didn't know. So I didn't realize this was something for every student. I thought you were looking at ECE students, but you're not looking at ECE. So you're looking at students that are in the classroom. So I think we're missing that. And I'll send you some suggestions, but I struggle with this as a parent, being in these really wonderful educated spaces, and I don't have the education background that you all have. And so I usually sit there and going, what are they talking about now? And I'm Googling while we're talking and making sure I can catch up with you all just so I can stay on a comprehensive level. So I think while this is I love the questions, I think you're going to have to drill it down a little bit more so that parents understand that this is not for the student that's having trouble or the student that is, this is for the students that they lost their grandmother or their mother, and you need to catch it before it starts affecting their grades and their behavior. And I don't think looking at this now, that's what you're seeing. You're going to see the kids that they think that they're already having issues, or they're already having EC, or they already have an IEP or something. They think this is for them. So I think we need to frame it so we make sure that all parents know this is for everyone. I don't know, there's a lot on here I'm processing because I'm trying to catch up on how this hits the parent sitting in the classroom with their kid
And
when they
Autumn-
come in for that parent-teacher conference.
Autumn, thank you for those comments. It's made my wheels turn, and I'm sorry, Melissa, to jump in, but you mentioned the Parent and Family Connection Hub, and that might be a great place to, we're always growing that, like to incorporate a section of what is MTSS and then have these conversation guides. So I'm just trying to think ahead, sitting in Autumn's vantage point, like how do I learn? And we're trying to push more of this is where you might go as a parent to find that information first to get to that resource that's somewhere within KDE's reach. So I just wanted to throw that. And thank you, Autumn. That made my wheels turn as well.
Okay. Thank you for this. It's a great conversation. I'm learning a lot. Thanks.
I had written down before, Autumn, you just shared that from a previous comment, that a common language of what I mean what is meant when we say to give that example of tier 1 doesn't have to be the magic answer of the term, but it's used a lot. So how might we add a common language of and call it, what do we mean when we say in very specific language of, that means everybody. I do want to say that students that are ECE would be considered in that all part of how are they a part of the whole school, and then obviously following the IEP specifics to what they need to support them, because I might have an IEP that addresses one area, behavior, math, whatever it might be, and still represented in the whole school, that tier 1. It would include all from gifted and talented and everybody in between.
I think the word all is very, very good, because when you think of tiers, you're like separating. I think if you say this is all students, and this is at the basis, every single student that walks in our building needs to know that they are getting these screenings. And I've never gotten a screening about behavior, or as another person said in here, you may have that information, but I've never been shared that. Now I've been shared other things in IEP meetings, but not in that. I have had 2 students now, one's graduated and now one's a 4th grader. My son was gifted and talented, where my daughter has an IEP. So there are 2 different ends of the spectrum, and I never had either one of those come through.
And Dr. Searcy and I had spoken before, at the time she was still on the agenda, and will in her upcoming one talk a little bit more about behavior and social emotional screeners. Of some of it has gone to an opt-in, and that's another discussion of families needing to opt in for social emotional screeners. And there's a little bit of shifts in what schools and districts have in terms of screening those, and she will address that. And I think we could even, Marcia, get that content before the next time she's here, because I think you said May. Is that what you said is the next time?
Sorry, I'm muted. Yes, May is our next meeting.
One other comment on this. You're going to get this question from parents, especially with all the budgets in a lot of districts, where some of those people in the school that were working with small groups with reading and social and that type of stuff, we've cut some of those from our schools. So you're going to get a lot of questions on, what if my school doesn't have the budget for this? Where do I turn next? And unless I know that my school is losing 2 of the teachers that work with our elementary to keep their reading up and stuff, there's not funding for that. So that's going to be another question you may have to address here. I don't know how you would address it on the state level, to be quite honest, but just a FYI, it's probably coming your way.
And at the end, I have my email, and Autumn, as you have information you want to share, to review, feedback, and to any of you, the email will be there. This is a work in progress of getting it ready, and my hope is that we can come up with something that is useful to families and to schools, because if a school has this, maybe starting to think from the perspective of, do we have this? And I know Marcia and I are on a review of that family, what is it called, Marcia? Family engagement rubric that we do twice a year.
Are you talking about the, yes. Yeah. We do. Actually, Melissa and I have worked quite a bit on several projects, so it took me a minute. But yes, we do look at just different reviews of how schools and districts are operating. And this is part of that, is that family engagement piece.
And really moving from a school just giving information to how are we partnering together? How are we really working together? And I think dialogues like this are part of forming and informing each other, because when we're free to share our perspective, it makes the discussion and the resources more efficient and effective.
Melissa, we have one more question. Tara.
Hi, I'm Tara from OVAC. I don't really have a question.
Yeah.
I have more I was just trying to kind of think through all of this. So I work with OVAC with the Head Start program, and as I was reading through the questions as well, I agreed with Autumn. Our kiddos are early Head Start, 0 to 3. And we do all the screenings and we do the family engagements. I was kind of looking at all the different tiers, like we participate in doing all of those things and align with those standards. And so my whole thought process was for this form, is there, like Autumn was saying, kind of make it word friendly, and we have families that high school diplomas, that they graduated with high school, and low income, and so just trying to get that whole thing, and we're trying to get them ready for school too, as far as doing the family partnerships. Like we work really close with our families and trying to get them used to that whole routine of, coming to family engagement nights and reading at home with your kiddos, and, just being there for them and doing the home visits and the parent teacher conferences. So all of those things. And so I think this document is really wonderful. And, so I was just kind of going off of that as, for the families that we work with, is there like an early childhood version to help get families ready for when they come to elementary school and on?
Not yet. I will say not yet to the early childhood. I think many would apply. However, thinking about it through that lens and just the cross-agency teams that I work with, it might be something that I take to the cross-agency team to get perspective from the different offices, because my guess is each office would bring additional information. That's helpful.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Tara. And I apologize to you saying a question. Every time I see a hand up, I automatically assume it's a question. So I will do better. So thank you.
No, it's okay.
Any other questions from the group? And Melissa, you have control there. Go ahead.
I will continue to answer questions as they go along. When I was thinking about this with MTSS, multi-tiered system of support, and think about it as one system of all of the academics, the behavior, the social, emotional learning, of being structured with the people and the processes together. How do we support one another to provide the best in education for the student and to maximize their outcomes? I think of it as well, you can't see me, but locking arms together and really partnering together to say, we want to give our students what they need. And one of my passions is equipping adults with what they need to be able to do that. And I think putting on the parent hat of how might I frame those a little bit, that gives me new thoughts. These resources are some that I pulled that I think might be helpful to you. The top one is the implementation guide, and this is what our schools and districts use to help them in building their structure. I highlighted those pages 47 to 51. That's specifically on the family engagement part, family partnership part, and it is a work in progress of really building a robust part of that in the implementation process. And I think this question document could be helpful in maybe a version for schools and districts also. There are family guides to understanding assessments, all the different assessment types that your student might have, from statewide assessments to those day-to-day formative assessments, checkpoints. That's explained there in that guide. Family standards guides and resources, if I don't know how familiar you are with that, that is by grade level, by subject, and family guides to help walk through that. If I have a kindergartner, I can click on that site and look at kindergarten math. Or if I have a high school student, I can look at English 10th grade. And that is a very robust resource document landing page. There's a literacy assessment flowchart that, if you're interested in it, it kind of takes the segment of the slide that we looked at with the arrows and walks through what it looks like in the literacy platform. There are the read at home plans that are there, and those are in Spanish and English. And actually, I believe the family guides are in Spanish and English also. There's the Kentucky Reading Research, and I have one slide that's going to show that landing page where they've created a role group for families and caregivers. And then I included in here, it's outside of my office, but it's support for diverse needs. And that takes you to the landing page to look at resources for EL, ECE. Oh, what else? There are multiple diverse needs that are on there, and that is another resource for you. I mentioned the reading improvement plan, and this one is a place where it is required in regulation. And I just highlighted that rectangle that says reading improvement team members must include the parent or guardian. And that is there for being a part of that discussion of how do we come alongside each other and support the students. Again, the guidance that we give from KYMTSS is that that's with all of our students when we're making an improvement plan for them. But for regulation purposes, it's the reading improvement plan and phasing in numeracy improvement plan. That is for kindergarten through 4th grade. That's regulation. Back to the reading research. This is a fairly new, I believe it's a little over a year, that has been a research center that is there to support literacy in the state of Kentucky. And it's a partnership with KDE and the University of Louisville. And you'll notice that one of the role groups is support for families. And they continue to add information to it that is specific to families and caregivers. Then it's other role groups that are on there. That might be helpful if you are in a situation where you're wanting to know more about literacy. You get on a committee knowing that that resource is there. And Marcia, plug to your hub. I love the hub as a place to take families to use that. I think that's just a really great addition to resources that we have. That's a whole bunch to take in. I'm going to pause for a minute, give us a moment to wrap our heads around it. And I know when I'm in a meeting and it goes to the next thing, a pause is sometimes helpful. If there's something that captured your attention and you have a Post-it or in your phone a note page or another way, I'm going to pause for about 30 seconds and just give you a chance to think, is there one thing I want to look into more before we go to the next part of the agenda? I'm going to say that was 30 seconds. It was a little under. If you guys have been wonderful about asking questions along the way, and that is super helpful in ensuring that it's as meaningful to you as possible. Do you have any final questions before we end our time today on the multi-tiered system of support? That is my email. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Marcia, you know where to find me if things come up after. And I just appreciate the time to be with you all and the invitation to come and share just a little bit about what is happening structurally to create an environment that meets the needs of our students.
I want to thank you so much. That was a wonderful presentation, and I want to thank the group for their interaction. Those questions were rich, and they just really helped not only with feedback, but all of us to get our wheels turning. And I can't thank you enough. And I know the kudos for the Parent and Family Connection Hub actually go to this group, because that came about as a recommendation from this group as a whole. And I just kind of helped bring it to fruition. So the group
Okay,
will appreciate.
kudos to
Yes,
all.
I know. The group's wonderful. Like just thinking about, and I love what Autumn said, like, because you always have to put on that parent that doesn't know this language. Just like when I started talking, and I just stopped in the middle of the title, I call it MTSS. I have for years, but I'm an educator. And Autumn's point, like a new parent and educator, they don't know the lingo that we just throw around. And I'm sure many of you on this call have talked in complete sentences and acronyms. I know I have, and when you catch yourself doing it, you crack up laughing because no one else would understand what we were saying. And so I always am appreciative of that. Let's stop, put that first time parent on. Are we being clear? Are we being helpful? Are we really including them in our conversation? And so I love the conversation today. I was going to say this later, and I may repeat myself, but many of the resources you shared today are actually they're linked on our Parent and Family Connection Hub. And so, again, we're just really trying to tie things together to make it an easier process. So Dr. Wainwright, thank you so much. You are welcome to stay with us for the remainder of our meeting. You are free to go. I know you have a busy calendar, but we are going to transition over to Mr. Marty Park, and I see him. Hey, Marty.
Hi.
And you're going to teach us, you're going to talk. I don't need to, you've got your slides, I think. We're going to hear about artificial intelligence in schools. And you can see I have a really interactive group. I love it. So they may ask questions as we go. You all feel free to raise your hand and we'll do our best to moderate that or just jump in. So Marty, it's all yours, and welcome.
Well, thank you so very much for inviting me and having me today. I did get the opportunity a few years ago to share with the Family Partnership Council about some other topics related to education technology and digital learning. And you are always a fun group to hear from, get feedback from, and learn from. So thank you so very much for having me on today. I was going to do a couple warm-up activities to kind of promote interaction and live feedback. I don't think I need to do that. Y'all are awesome. And so that's exciting for me when I get to join different groups who really have no trouble giving my feedback. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen if I can. And if someone can, actually, I'm going to stop that real quick. And if someone can let me know when you can see it, that would be really cool. How about now?
We can see it. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much. So again, my name is Marty Park, and on the agenda, David Couch, our Associate Commissioner in our Office of Education Technology, and our Chief Information Officer was preparing to join as well. We've had a lot of fun working with different groups and talking about artificial intelligence. And so I love that your purpose, he's, by the way, had a conflict and was not able to be with us today. And so I get the opportunity to kind of share with you the whole time and don't have to share with David. So thank you again. I love that your purpose as a council is really focused on providing input regarding topics of interest. Like I keyed in on that initially at the opening of the meeting. Topics of interest, I think you can't really walk too many steps anywhere without seeing the acronym of AI or having someone talk about artificial intelligence. We now are in a world where we kind of like to push on and the idea that artificial intelligence today is kind of like sunlight. It's going to be there, and we need it. Sometimes we don't. and having the opportunity to know that it's there is really helpful for us, and to figure out what it means for us in the learning space with our teachers, with our students is pretty critical moving forward. We do consider AI to be vital and important current emerging technology. So you'll hear me say that, quite a bit today, and really focus on the idea of emerging technologies. We've been here before with different emerging technologies. That's not to say, though, that we do not believe that AI is as transformational as other important emerging technologies like the internet, like mobile computing, like social media. And so the adoption rate of artificial intelligence today definitely tells us that we need to continue to do our work to get out in front of the skills that it takes to leverage artificial intelligence in the right ways, and also be aware of the complications around AI. And so we'll talk a little bit about that today. Again, if you're like me, you love interacting and giving feedback. There is a button at the top. I saw somebody use a reaction a little bit ago. Maybe it was an accident, maybe it was on purpose. But if you don't mind, at the top of your Teams screen, there's a button that says reactions. And if you can tap that and just test it real quick with me so that I can make sure that we're all connected and syncing. So either clap hands. I think earlier someone tapped the heart button. There's some hand clapping. Okay, cool. Good. So we're all together, and your participation and feedback, please just stop me. Unmute your mic and jump in, ask a question, give a thought, give a story or an example. I think that'll be important. So again, we believe that AI is as transformational as other technologies that we've implemented in the past, both in our personal work lives, our private, work, or as a consumer in our day-to-day interactions, but also in our schools. And so it's important for us to continue the work and ensure that we are really thinking about AI in action. And that's the title of what we've been talking quite a bit about. This has been about a 2.5 or 3 year body of work that we've engaged in from the Kentucky Department of Education in partnership with our school districts. And obviously the ideas around AI in action will continue to be important, whether that's policy, whether that's in practice. And so we'll touch on some of that today. I want to make a differentiation just from the get-go here and discern between using AI, using artificial intelligence, and making AI. So that's a pause point for us to really understand the difference between, are we talking about our students who are interested in computer sciences and making technologies or making AI in their future, whether that's moving into higher ed, whether that's going into the workforce and making artificial intelligence, or is it conversations around all of us learning how to safe, securely, and responsibly use artificial intelligence? So those are two different things. They touch on each other, and they're important for us to have strategies for both. And so I'll touch on that a little bit today. Also, we'll touch on a differentiation between consumer tools versus our safe district and school tools and concepts, again, policy and practice with artificial intelligence. And then also, before we go any further, I want to recognize two different races. There's an AI race, a race. I don't know that it's a race to the finish, so it's more like a marathon than a sprint. Currently, with artificial intelligence, it seems like a sprint. But there are two different AI races. One is with everything that we touch that plugs into the wall, has blinky lights, is digital, has data flowing in and out of it, has a screen that we touch and interact with. So all of those technologies, there's a race to integrate artificial intelligence, and we need to pause and recognize that. So the vendor that we buy things from, the company that we work with, everyone is racing to implement AI in a way that is helpful. Again, whether that's on the consumer side, so what we do at home, or in our schools and in our school districts. And so we need to understand that race, number one. And then the second AI race is by all of us to learn as quickly as we can how to safely, securely, and responsibly use artificial intelligence in the right ways. And so I will say a bunch of times today, safely, securely, and responsibly, because that is very critical to our conversation around artificial intelligence. So that's kind of a framing for today's chat and interaction, and really reaction for you to think about how our students are really using these emerging technologies. Finally, before we go any further, I'm a former classroom teacher. I'm a former district administrator, and I've been at the Kentucky Department of Ed for quite some time now as our Chief Digital Officer and Deputy Chief Information Officer. And so all of the technologies that we touch and use in our schools and districts are very important to us. We never implement technologies just for technology's sake. We never want to do that. The idea of kids sitting behind a screen for multiple hours a day, not connected to the right content, not focused around the right learning design is not what we want. That's not what we promote. That's not what we're after. So it's really important for us to think about learning design and where technology integrates appropriately and responsibly, especially in terms of anything that our students interact with. So that's something I like to say. My favorite job that I have, and most important job, is I'm a husband and father of 5 of our Kentucky public school students. And so this work not only is important, I think, for our schools, our classrooms, and our districts across the state, but for me personally, it's also important work with my own kids. And so I really connect with your mission and the family partnership and council. And so it's very important. So I look forward to this conversation today and any future questions that you may have. I love to play a quick game. So love to think about artificial intelligence, and some of you online are experts in AI at this point. You're using tools, you're interacting. You know that if you go to buy a new computer at home, you're no longer just buying a PC, you're all of a sudden buying an AI PC, right? So artificial intelligence is like sunlight, maybe like air at this point. But understanding how we are using artificial intelligence in the right ways is really important. So we have a program that we sponsor from the Kentucky Department of Ed called the Student Technology Leadership Program. It's STLP. You may be familiar with it. We have about 60,000 students statewide participate annually. There's a lot of competition based, but it's about producing artifacts, producing work, leveraging technologies, and students producing. And so we have different competitions throughout the program, throughout the year, and I wanted to share a couple because we've known that our students have had access to artificial intelligence tools for a couple years now, and our guidelines and rules on usage of AI is important, and we're very clear about that. But we've run across a few things. So this is a test. So let's do is it real or AI? So this is a digital image, and you can kind of see that if you zoom in or get close to your screen, you can see the detail here. So the question is it real or is it AI? So in the chat, if you don't mind, just to type real or AI. We'll see that coming in. If someone can help me, because I'm sharing my screen, if you can help me kind of see the chat come in.
So far, we all have AI. The group thinks it's AI.
So you all are so good. Geesh, I should have done a little bit more homework. But actually, this is real. So this is a student's product and student work who use zero artificial intelligence. This is Akira H. From the STEAM Academy in Fayette County. This was using a lot of technique and artistic work on an iPad and drawn by hand. And so Very, very awesome. Obviously, this student has a ton of skill. Could have used AI, but chose to produce their own work from hand. Okay, so that one was easy. And just to give a balance, again, here's some additional. Here's one more, just as a test here. So is it real or AI? This is different. So we're all familiar and comfortable now with letting AI produce text for us, hopefully when and where appropriate. We're all familiar now with letting AI produce visual representation of something like we just displayed. That could be in a still image. It could be in full motion video. AI is producing full motion video now really well. And this is an audio clip. So let's see if this is real or AI. And I'll turn hopefully you can hear it. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear it.
I met a boy when I moved down, so we just didn't work it out. I hope that I found the right thing for me.
So this was part of a digital audio competition with creative and custom music design, and a student actually submitted this. And so our question obviously is it real or AI? So let's, in the chat, if someone can moderate and tell me what we think. I wanted to give a balance here. The first one obviously was I shared it's real. So what are we seeing come through the chat here?
So Marty, we have a no clue, and we have several AIs.
Yeah. Okay, good. I love the no clue, by the way. And I love that because we're at a space where original work by us is now really difficult to tell if it's artificial intelligence. In fact, there's some new metrics and statistics coming out about social media posts and how many social media posts are actually by an AI bot or by a human using AI to produce that content. And so this, in fact, is real again. And so I love to share this because we're in a space again where AI is getting so good that now we are starting to question whereas a couple years ago, when there was no interaction by us to use generative artificial intelligence tools, we knew that it was real because that's all the tools we had access to. So this is by Kara B from Metcalfe County High School. And so this is a custom piece written. Lyrics were written by Kara and produced by Kara, certainly using some digital tooling to capture the music and audio. But no AI was used in the creation of these tools. So it puts us, I like to do this. This was just 2 rounds of is it real or AI? It puts us in the space to start to question and wonder the products that we're engaging with or the products that that our students are submitting or sharing. There's an assumption if it's really, really good now that AI must have created it. And that's a false assumption. Moving forward. So the question then is, what are we asking our students to produce in order to show that they know, right? So we're in a different space, a different phase. No longer can we just ask a question that we used to say that could be Googled. The answer could be Googled. Well, now are we asking simple questions that AI can just give us the answer to? So it changes what we're doing in terms of learning design to demonstrate learning. And it also changes what our students are doing to defend their products. So I think it's an interesting space for us. All of this is wrapped around an area of emphasis that we have at the Kentucky Department of Ed, which is to encourage, engage, and empower, and that word empower is important. We'll unpack this, but the safe, secure, and responsible uses of AI in our school, into school efficiency and the learning space by teachers. I see Tara has a question. As you're asking this question, our job moving forward is to ensure that we remain in the loop. We should not just let AI go and do things for us. When we're not prepared and we do not have the skill sets, we should not be using artificial intelligence at all until we have those skill sets. And I'm going to touch a little bit on that. So what was your question?
How are, I guess, teachers going about trying to figure out the reality of the different things like that? I did a training. I'm a certified trainer for OVAC, and I had to do a training, and I implemented a song using Mercari. I think it's called Mercari. I think, and it was great, and I thought it was amazing, and all of the students that I was working with, actually adult students, thought it was great as well. But I am not musically inclined at all, but it sure
Right.
sounded like I was. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where my question was at.
Yeah, I love your question. So, and my quick response is, we're in a very interesting season right now, and there are opportunities and times when using an artificial intelligence tool, generative AI, like Suno or Mercari, like you mentioned. There's a new app or new tool every single minute of every day being launched that can produce great things that I don't have the skills for. So understanding when it's appropriate to use those and with what different groups is super important. And that's our next best step. Our next best step is to understand when, where, how we can safely, securely, and responsibly use. What you would never do, and I know for sure, Tara, you would never take that song and publish it and say that it's yours, that you created it, right? So you have those skill sets to understand that responsible use. You would disclose the use in a fun way and in the right space, and that becomes super important. So what we'll continue to push on with those hard questions, because I think folks want a quick answer, and that's just not where this space leads us. It leads us to what I refer to as the power of pause. And so we have to pause and ask that question of, should I use this? Can I use this? If I use this, how am I going to disclose that I partnered with the artificial intelligence to do that? We partner all the time with colleagues, with students, with other teachers across the state, and we celebrate that partnership. And when we can put artificial intelligence as an emerging technology, not as this crazy thing that we've never figured out how to leverage before, because again, we've figured out how to leverage the internet appropriately, mostly, right? We've figured out how to leverage mobile computing. We've figured out how to understand social media. And so it's skill sets, and it's leveraging in the right ways so that we can partner and disclose that partnership. I want to pause here. I'm going to share in the chat some additional resources as I close out. At a quick hyperlink, kets.news/AI. KETS stands for the Kentucky Education Technology System. So kets.news/AI will take you directly to our guidance brief. And this is an artificial intelligence guidance brief. We were one of the first states to publish a guidance brief to help our schools and districts and policymakers start to think about artificial intelligence in the right ways. And this continues to get updated. It was last updated in December of 2025, just a few weeks ago. Well, now I guess it's March, so it's a couple months ago now at this point. But this guidance brief is important. I'm also going to give you a link to a web page on our Kentucky Department of Ed website that captures a bunch of resources that we will continue to use. So if you want to put that in a tab somewhere, I'll put it in the chat for you to access. And inside that guidance brief, we're going to continue to push on consistency, balance, and normalization. Now, the key here is that if we're not able to work with our teachers from a professional learning perspective, from a skill set perspective, then we should not just start implementing AI, right? And I would say that's very consistent and balanced with how we feel about any education technology. We know that there's power and we can build digital superpowers for our students as they think about being a contributing member of our future workforce. But that all takes building those skills and being very intentional about how we do that. So unpacking these points, I'll go quick here. I'm going to speed up. Unpacking these points, what does it mean when we encourage? That encouragement comes with additional components, pieces, and parts. It comes with being engaged and understanding how to become empowered in using artificial intelligence in the right ways, when to use, when not to use. The safe, secure, and responsible framing is critical. It is absolutely critical. We are really big on understanding from a school perspective and a district perspective, what partners do you already have that are leveraging artificial intelligence? Mentioned already in the meeting earlier is our early warning work inside of Infinite Campus. That is powered with artificial intelligence. And so those are toolings that are built in by a trusted partner. And that partnership was developed with Infinite Campus and the Kentucky Department of Education and Kentucky school, classroom, school, and district leaders to understand what that product should look like, and then where can artificial intelligence help in that early warning work. That early warning work is absolutely powered with AI, and so it's important to understand that where from a school efficiency perspective or a learning perspective, and I've already mentioned, but humans staying in the loop. We would never promote having a generative AI tool produce something for you, just copy, paste, boom, send it out. That's not how this works. There are mistakes that AIs make. There are hallucinations that AIs create. That you have to have the skill sets and that power of pause in order to stay in the loop, and not let the AI run wild on its own. I'm gonna I'll speed up here. We use this conversation starter with superintendents recently, as well as with principals recently, and so I'm kind of hitting on some of these points so that if you find yourself in conversations with other leaders, maybe it's helpful to see where we're coming from. Again, ethically understanding where the impact comes in with the AI broadly. A point I like to make here is that a lot of artificial intelligence use, especially generative AI, and how we all as users can interact with different generative AI tools, it's all about the data. We have to understand that any sensitive data that we have, we never want to feed to a consumer-based artificial intelligence tool, because that tool then uses that data broadly in its model. And so that's an understanding point, and understanding that consumer-based artificial intelligence may be used for inspiration, may be used to try something out. But in terms of what we want to do in our schools and districts, we want to use and work with safe partners that we already have engagements with. The reason, and this chart shows up in a lot of different places and ways, but the reason that we call on urgency here is really the adoption rate of artificial intelligence tools. So this is not a fad. It's not at all going away. And I like to just push on, the hype is real. Companies, businesses, us as individuals are finding really big value and return on investment here. And so we're going to continue to see people integrate, companies integrate, vendors, partners integrate, and that's important. So I've already said this, but it's as transformational. And so as other emerging technologies, so we need to kind of wrap our arms around that and understand it. So that takes us to our students, right? We like to lead with students, and we like to lead with student voice. And just as a note, for any leader or any counsel in your position, I know you think about students first. And a question that we love to ask is, for any decision that's made. Is that a kid decision or an adult decision? And so student voice is critical, especially in terms of education technologies. And, we got to make space for them, and we got to understand what our students are saying. And so we've got some work in this space, and it's pretty important. So in our digital readiness work across the state of Kentucky, we have what we produce every year. And so that digital readiness leads into really important perspective for us, and it's all the way across the state. It's every school district participates. But then we take a subset of districts and we get student voice and teacher voice. And so in terms of artificial intelligence, just this year, we have some very important metrics that we are watching. For example, 80% of our districts report an intentional effort to encourage, engage, and empower, like that. So again, I'm saying those words again because that's our guiding light there. Empower the safe, secure, and responsible uses of AI. So 80% of our districts are working now through intentional efforts. 78% of teachers report feeling comfortable or somewhat comfortable incorporating AI into developing plans or differentiation or helping to create resources. That's a large number compared to a couple years ago. 69% of our school administrators are reporting creating, artifacts and products, drafts, emails, images, things like that may help on a daily basis. And then when we work and talk with our students, 46% of 6th through 12th graders say that they have experimented with AI tools on their own time outside of the school setting. So I want to put a pin there. That's a big number. Whereas only 28% of those same students say that they're using AI tools regularly to support their schoolwork or homework assignments. And then finally, 45% of 3rd through 5th say that teachers have used AI in lesson with class. So there's a couple of things that are really, really important here. Again, storylines, student voice, and aligning that with our teacher voice and our leader voice is extremely important. Again, these are in the infographic that we produce every year in January. That'll be linked so you can get to it, especially in these slides as well if you want to go back and check it out. So that big number, that 46%, what we love to continue to work on, push on, is that all of the interactions that we're doing with technologies, number one, it's different than personal entertainment technologies. It is different than things that we may do on our personal iPhones, smartphones. What we're talking about is instructional, educational technologies. These are structured learning and intentional uses of digital tools and resources. And so when we think about 46% of our students experimenting on their own time, it forces us to ask the question of, are they prepared for that? Do they have the skill sets for that? Have we worked enough inside of classroom, inside of school, guiding in the right way from what we refer to as a digital citizenship perspective to understand that responsible use element, which becomes super important. Prior to generative AI tools, we know that folks can use technologies or platforms and apps inappropriately. Our job is to help our students understand those responsible uses, understand where the power of pause plays in, and engage in real conversations in classrooms to help steer our students in the right direction if those conversations are not happening at home, so that what we do in school impacts what our students are doing out of school with the access that they have. What we also know is that all of our computers that our students are using across the state, Chromebooks or what have you, have internet content management tools built into them. And so we have very sophisticated tooling to help steer students in the right direction. And so getting access to inappropriate apps or artificial intelligence that is not safe, secure, and responsible should be hard, should be difficult to do, or almost impossible to do. So these are really important points for us as we move forward. And I'm going to actually start to wrap up here there's more information here. I didn't get all the way through, but we need to find the balance, and there's a spectrum here of AI use within our schools. On the far left, this is just a visual representation of what we are seeing. There's prohibited use, and so that's where every bit of AI is blocked, and teachers are not permitted to use different AI tools, whether that's consumer-based tools or district or school-sponsored tools. All the way to the far right of the spectrum, where everything is just wide open usage, right? So we think this balance becomes pretty important. And so there's a step here where most things are prohibited, but maybe there's an exception in place in a few places. We're now seeing on the spectrum more districts with this restricted use, requested use approach, where there's curated selections of safe exploration of artificial intelligence. Again, these are not consumer-based tools. These aren't tools that that at home someone might use on their own personal device. These are curated. They're safe with partners that are trusted. So that gets more towards open use. And so then a question that we work with leaders on is where are you currently? And then where do you want to be? And so, from a family partnership council perspective, this is a good conversation point to say, where do we want to be? Do we want to have opportunities for our students to learn how to safely, securely, and responsibly use artificial intelligence in ways that can help them? And so when we interact with our students and we get that student voice, the next step that we take is focus groups to try to dig deeper, to understand more, ask the best next question. So two weeks ago, we had a focus group with students from all across the state. There were 15 students. And what we learned from our students is that they're using AI to, when they miss content, they were out for something off campus with another class, and they missed an important lesson or concept, and so they needed a little bit more coaching. They needed some additional tutoring in that area in order to get caught back up on that concept. Now, we would ask the question of, so when you engage with that artificial intelligence, because certainly your teacher was not accessible 24/7, and you couldn't reach out at night and try to get caught back up from your teacher. So was it tied into the right content? Was it a high quality instructional resource based coaching that you were engaged in? And if not, then let's steer towards a different tool, a different approach. And so most of our high quality instructional materials work is now we need to be ready for those partners to integrate artificial intelligence so that our students can get that tutoring that's tied into the content in the right way. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of stop with this idea that using AI as a partner for work and learning. We kind of like this question of, can you help me? And whatever interaction I have with a safe AI tool that we have a partnership with, we kind of like that approach of understanding, can you help me? And then can I disclose that use that I partnered with AI? And we think the answer can be yes in a lot of cases. However, we know that if our students are not prepared and ready to work with these technologies, these emerging technologies, and if our teachers are not ready to work with these emerging technologies, then we need to pause, go back and revisit that. So I'm going to put some information in the chat as we move forward. We have an AI in action component that I think you will find interesting, where we're really looking at AI guidance. We're looking at standards and readiness. We have new academic standards that have integrated artificial intelligence skills. Professional learning, we're launching a course for teachers right now. That's kind of this entry level of artificial intelligence use in classrooms. And thinking about AI fluency in ways that make sense, as well as emerging innovations, just like in terms of teacher retention and recruitment. We believe that artificial intelligence can help us there a bit. And so if you go to Go Teach KY, goteachky.org, you will see an AI agent that can help. And it's that agent is doing a lot of really great work. Number one, it's answering questions 24/7. It's answering deep questions, but it's really only answering questions with the information that it's given on the website, and it's leading folks towards better answers quicker. And so we're excited. We're excited about that. So I'm going to pause. That was a whole lot, really quick. I tried to get as much in there as I could, Marcia. So if that's okay, we can open up for conversation and question and feedback. And I see some hands up. Perfect.
Go ahead, Rhonda.
Okay, well, me again. One of the things that I think is so important in looking from the family perspective too, with COVID and the things and the learning environment that all of us were forced into, right? There was a lot more accessing technology. And just because of the nature of what we were all living through, right? And some of the fear moving back from that is maybe we are still having some reliance on technology to do the teaching, and the huge concern that, it does go all the way back to that balance. We have to be able to not completely rely on it, that it enhances, right? And it helps us, but also too, our children and our youth need to be able to do things not through AI or technology, because
100%.
Right now there is a huge gap between once they transition out of high school, can they do functional things, right? And so again, that shift of how it helps. Now the assistive technology and AI, particularly for students with disabilities, has been a game changer, right? But that still doesn't alleviate. We need to ensure across the board in how we do the messaging and how we set an expectation that nothing replaces it, that these are still critical things that we cannot rely on AI for. And I just think that's so important.
I love that. I definitely shout that as loud as we can, and we all need to join together in that messaging. It was great to hear our students in a focus group talk about. Of course, they gave examples of some of their peers that have what they are considering developing an over-reliance on some tooling. We've seen that quite a bit, and I think that we can't say that enough. Learning is learning, and we have to continue to focus on learning, which is why I like to push on understanding student demonstration and product, and that defense of learning. I think we're in a great space of understanding vibrant learning and student product, and having the opportunity for our students to demonstrate in new ways and defend that. It really fits into all the work that we've been doing with Portrait of a Learner, Profile of a Graduate, Portrait of a Learner. I know some districts have some framing there differently. Rhonda, I hear you loud and clear. I'm interesting in that space because, and I'm just giving a personal example. I don't like AI writing for me. I like my voice to come through. And I say that because of years of developing that foundation, right? If our students do not get that foundation, then there absolutely will be an over-reliance and as we move into the workforce. And so, using technologies to help develop our superpowers in the right way is really important. And the over-reliance is a real issue. It's a real concern that we're watching and trying to help push on as much as we can. So Leah says that, yep, absolutely agree. Totally agree. And I think that when you look at our guidance brief and when you look at other states, we've partnered with a few other states. For example, the professional learning course that we have available in the KY Learning Hub for teachers and leaders. That was a partnership with 4 states that we've all kind of been working on, not just releasing the right guidance that we think is appropriate, but we're kind of working together in partnership because these are real conversations, real issues. And the first step is understanding that it's not going away. Leah, thank you.
Yeah, Marty, I just wanted to add that I teach a pre-service class at a university. And so from that perspective, and the university pays for ChatGPT for all of the students. And it's the voice that you mentioned, like having your authentic voice come through in your writing. It's just annoying now because I don't even have to read it. I can look at the structure, and even if they change the formatting, I can see there's a series of 3 things. And most people at that undergraduate level are not writing in that way. And I can immediately tell. And even though they're being encouraged to use it, so now we're having to rethink all of the assignments that we're giving them to think, how do we AI proof this? And we thought initially that it was going to be reflection, right? Like read this, make meaning, and now give your personal reflection. And so now they're putting that into ChatGPT and they're saying, give a personal reflection of these things. So now we're looking at that saying, well, that layer doesn't even work because they're not concerned with their own voice coming through or making meaning. So now we're thinking, okay, if someone can get an undergrad degree and have never made meaning from what they're writing, what content knowledge or what knowledge base do they come out of school with? And then when you layer that into, these are going to be your next teachers, right? If you don't have the foundation yourself. So just trying to support the use, right? Responsible, careful, safe, effective use, but at the same time, expecting people to learn, what it is that they're going to be teaching.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. We're in an interesting space, right? And an interesting time. And I really think there's an opportunity to rethink how we know that somebody knows. And so submitting a paper, for example, where there's other ways to understand if somebody can write. And so I think it's an interesting space. We're all struggling. I teach graduate courses as well, and we're all working through it. And to pretend that we have all the right answers right now is definitely tricky. So the question is, how do we have and promote intentional, responsible use while also framing around when and where to use? And so that's the struggle. And so we hear it loud and clear, and we're experiencing it all together at the same time.
Marty, Autumn had a question. She had her hand up. Do you still have your hand up, Autumn?
No, I just put it in the chat. I was just looking, what good resources do you suggest parents to look at? Because there's lots out there, and some are really great, and some may not be great, and some are charging, some are not. And it is, is this really an AI tool, or is this just, oh, I want your $10?
Yeah.
I didn't know if you had any suggestions. I didn't see it on the site when I looked quickly, but I did a quick scan. I didn't know if you had that somewhere. You talked about with teachers, but I didn't see anything with families.
So we, as a part of that 4-state partnership, we did develop a family resource kit, and it's inside of that professional learning course for teachers. We will probably include that on the KDE website portion as well, so that anyone can get to it.
Okay.
We really love the work from SREB, the Southern Region Education Board. We have that linked on that page. It's some of the best work that's out there. SREB, we've been a long time partner with SREB. In fact, David Couch, who was had a conflict and couldn't be here with us today, he was a part of the committee on developing those resources. And so there are some good resources. There are also, to your point, some resources that really just want parents to buy stuff, and that's part of developing that skill set. I had a slide, I didn't get to it, but it's not really about the slide. It's about the point of understanding literacy versus fluency in this world. And so we are pushing on the idea of AI fluency. In other words, that is to say that having an understanding and having the skill sets and knowing about artificial intelligence in today's world is one thing, but what we need is the ability to the fluency model of being able to use the AI in the right ways. And so that's the next step for us. It's not just stopping at knowing or understanding. It's all the way towards adoption in the right ways. Great question.
I also think parents don't realize how much these apps connect, and you touched on it in
Yep.
the first, because you share data here, and then it's shared here, and then here, and then here, and before you know it, oh, it's great to do that passkey. You can just do this, but then everybody's got your information.
That's right.
And,
That's right. There's so much in the digital space that, again, we promote the 9 elements of digital citizenship quite a bit, and it's been the lifeblood of really the Kentucky education technology system for 20 years or so. And it's really, really important that if we're going to buy technologies and touch technologies, that we're teaching and learning. So I'll be the first to say teaching doesn't always equal learning. So pause there and get that. But teaching and learning these digital citizenship skills, which cover all the interactions with artificial intelligence, and not that any single person can know everything about all these new digital interactions and digital spaces, but a broad understanding of safe, secure, and responsible use is what we're after.
I think Beth had a question as well. I think she took her hand down though. Go ahead, Beth.
It was really just a comment, just kind of to piggyback what Leah was saying. It's interesting that we live in a world where everything is ran through AI so much. A colleague of mine blamed me for an AI email, and it actually was not AI. I wrote that myself. I was like, that's so funny. We're in this world now where you really can't hardly decipher sometimes what's AI and what's not. So I just wanted to put that out there too.
And Beth, it's so funny you mentioned that. I've had 3 things, not in the professional realm at all, but in my personal relationships, connections, family, that have come up this week around AI answers, documents, those kind of things. And I'm like, well, let's put the brakes on here, because I think we need to talk about, is that ethical? And I'm not an expert in any way, shape, or form. So I think it's interesting how it's just infiltrated. I don't know if that's the correct word, but like you said, Marty, it's a race. And so we're all trying to figure it out while applying it simultaneously. And so that makes it very, very challenging for all the roles we play as adults. So I just wanted to add that too, Beth. I was right there with you.
And Beth, I'll just a quick reaction. Good on you that you're better than AI, right? But that's why I like to start. I like to start with, is it real or AI? And kind of the play is that these were real, and students did this. They created these artifacts, and they're that awesome that they created these artifacts that now adults are saying, well, they couldn't have done that. That had to be AI. And I think that that's a constant reminder for us. If we think it's possible that it could be AI, then it's worth digging into to see if it's real or not. And our students can tell us that. Now, can somebody cheat? Right. Absolutely. And we've always had opportunity to not tell the truth, or to cheat, or not disclose where you've gotten additional help. Right. I mean, that's not new to us. And so, just kind of keeping that fresh in the front of our minds. I think we got one more question.
Yeah, I just have a statement. So I was just thinking that it's like, are we using it as a resource, or are we using it as our knowledge base and as the information? I grew up in a time in college where you went to the library and you looked on shelves and you found journal articles and you made copies of the things you wanted to use as your resource. And then we got to a point where we're just Googling everything that we want as a resource. And now this is our resource. So how are we using that information, I think, is key to using AI effectively and appropriately.
100%. And can we trust it? Right. So if I go to the library and I look at research that has been published, and I know that it's published in a peer review journal, for example, there's a level of trust that I am assuming. If I take something that is produced by an AI tool, then do I do my due diligence to check and understand, can I trust that response or not? AIs make mistakes, just like if a teacher were to ask me as a student a question and I can Google the answer and I get the first hit up on the list, up on the screen with the little scroll, was that a good question? Right. That's the right way to think about that. And so great point, Brittany, that understanding the resources we're using to develop our knowledge base, and checking and engaging, is it trustworthy or not, I think is critical. I mean, those are part of the skills. And I was kind of getting into the fluency part of, we think it's critical for digital and AI fluency that we are able to apply those skills and not just take the first thing that pops on the screen. That's always the wrong answer moving forward. It always has been the wrong answer.
Marty, thank you so very much. This has been such a great discussion, and I would love to hear more about the fluency aspect of it. I think that's a deeper conversation for us to have maybe in the future. But what a great exchange of just thoughts and questions as we've been learning together and with you and from you. So I want to thank you for joining us so much. I know this group will probably continue to have questions. I love this group. We're so lively and interactive, and they make the meetings fun and fly by. And I'm looking at the clock and it's 2:51. Please stay with us if you can. I'm going to do just a recap of where we are, just a review of where we are as a committee with some recommendations. And I'm going to try to do that in the next 8 minutes. And you're free to go if you need to. And lastly, you all continue to think about any questions you have for either of our presenters. And let me go back and share my screen and we'll wrap up today. This has been a great meeting so far. I'm in awe of the great questions and comments that we've had today. So let me very quickly, there we go. Let me get to my slide. I apologize. I thought I was there. I'm going to give you a quick update on our Family Partnership Council recommendations to KDE. If you remember, there were 4. I will go through this pretty fast, so stop if you have a question or a comment. There were 4, if you remember, from the 22-24 group. I believe the first recommendation was to encourage districts and schools to develop local web pages that included what we've been talking about today, like more robust relationship building and communication around family and community engagement. And so under that recommendation were the following, like to utilize the 4 C's of connection, cognition, confidence, and capacity for their programs in that dual capacity framework. I think we're all familiar with that. But also the full service community schools manager would highlight schools doing well. Let me tell you where we are. The first recommendation update is we developed a questionnaire, which you all helped with the input and looking at. If you can remember back when we did that, I think it was early in 25, maybe even late 24. We also published success stories, and you can find those on the Family Partnership Council. Let me give you a real quick, let me just give you a great update of connecting those 4 C's. There is a success story there about a dinner table project. And so when we think about the 4 C's and making a connection, like the group shared a meal with their family in a sit-down setting, and then the cognition, the skill and knowledge that they gained, they learned how to prepare that meal, and they actually gained some confidence during that skill learning session of doing that together, and actually took home a meal to put in the freezer and use later. And then it went on to that 4C of capacity. All of those families left with a free crock pot, a free recipe book, and that meal that they made together. So it had done all four of the C's in a single activity or night with families. And so I just wanted to highlight that one, as it does cover all of those things that we're aiming to do. The second recommendation was that KDE was to hire a full service community schools manager, fully funded by the Pritchard Committee through December of 2027. So let me give you an update where we are here. The federal Department of Education, so we're talking about the USDOE, grant funding for that role was non-renewed at the end of 2025. This work, however, is still ongoing and being supported by the Pritchard Committee. What we've done at KDE is we have woven those community assets and collaboration with community and families into our continuous improvement planning process for our schools and districts statewide. There's language built in around looking at those things in when schools and districts build their needs assessments and their school improvement planning and district improvement planning pieces. So that work is still ongoing. It just looks different. Recommendation 3, this council made recommendations on how we would support families in navigating those educational options, and then partner in 2025. This group would partner with KDE and other organizations to create an online age-indexed family-friendly guide. So here's our update. We've mentioned this several times this afternoon. The Parent and Family Connection Hub, it officially hard launched on November 17th of 2025 during Family Engagement in Education Week in Kentucky. And that's a mouthful. It used to just be Family Education Week. So I have shared in my role, I've shared this resource, and many of you have. I know Melissa talked about it earlier. I know Laura Beard has shared it in her work. Shared this resource, and I've also asked for feedback from this group and from all of the groups, both interagency at KDE and with external advisory groups and different co-ops, just to see, to share, to let them know that this is out there. Everything on this webpage is parent facing, as we've talked about. I've also represented this work recently on a family engagement panel with the Regional Educational Laboratory, which we called REL, Appalachian Summit for Kinship Caregivers and Families panel discussion. And that's a lot, but it was great to share Kentucky's work with 4 other states on what we're doing around family engagement. And certainly we shared about this particular group and the work that you all have done in the recommendation and this hub. So I was able to share that work there recently. And then recommendation 4 was our work for 24-26 is to assist in the implementation of those 3 previous goals, and that is ongoing, and most importantly, to support adoption of the Kentucky Family and School Partnership Guide. So the update is to let you know that Kentucky Family and School Partnership Guide, it just really does give a structure and a roadmap to schools and districts that are trying to really include that. It also includes the Family Engagement Digital Playbook. I share both of the guide, which is linked on our Family Partnership webpage, and the digital playbook almost every presentation that I give. It just enables schools to know if what they're doing is working, or where they might need to shift, or where they might need to concentrate efforts. But also, and sometimes we forget this piece, it offers a great way to celebrate when you get to that true level of true partnership with families and communities. And so that guidebook is a great example. So I'm going to close out here. I'm trying to keep us, I think I have 2 minutes. Are there any other resources that you all would like to see added? I know we've talked a little bit about the MTSS. Is there anything else from this group before I stop sharing? And I can't see your hands if you just come off mute. next meeting is May 27th. Here's my email. If you have any questions, you have anything else that you'd like to comment about for today, I'm going to stop sharing so I can see everyone again. This has been a great meeting. I know all of our heads are full. We've learned a lot about MTSS and AI, and I know I have taken pages of notes throughout this. I've seen a lot of you writing and heads nodding now. And so please, as you process, reach out. And I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the week. I know spring break is coming up and your kiddos are going to be with you. So just be safe, and I will talk to you all soon. And it is 3 p.m. on the dot. So everyone have a wonderful rest of the day.